Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Well, some guys over there on the Discord server told me to have a look at this Ventoy application, and so I wanted to go ahead and just show you kind of what it can do and talk about a few of the limitations that I've encountered as I've just been experimenting with what it can do. So, of course, Ventoy is a multi-USB booter solution. So, what it's proposed to do is you install it to a USB drive, and then you can just dump that drive full of different ISO images, and then you can boot various computers off of them. They have support for both legacy BIOS and UEFI. And if you head on over to their main site here, then you can download it. You can get an installer for both Windows and for Linux. Sorry, Apple users. And extra sorry, Apple users, I was not actually able to get this guy to work on a Mac at all. In other words, after it's installed to the device, it's no longer reliant on the operating system, of course. These are just the installers. And every single time I attempted to boot something up, I could get to the menu. I just could not boot off of any particular distro. So what you do is you want to download the files. And if you click on this guy here, it's going to take you to the GitHub page, and then you can download the files. And then if you head on over to the documentation tab, now they have the basic news over here. From the over here, you just want to start at the get started, and then this will kind of walk you through the installation process. So what we have here is we're just going to download it, and let's go ahead and increase the size of this guy here so you can kind of see what's on my terminal here. All right, so here we've downloaded it, and it is a tarball, and I've just extracted it, using the tar extraction, and now I have this Ventoy folder here. So let's just go into our folder. We have a tool, we have the Ventoy, the boot, and we have the Ventoy to disk.sh, so we have a little script. Now, of course, you do need to know where your USB drive is. Usually it should be like dev SDB or something, but if you don't know how to do that, just do a sudo fdisk -l and give it your password. Whoa, fdisk, not fisk. Wow. Okay, so dev SDB1 is the actual first partition there, but the disk is SDB. So if you try and do the SDB1, it's going to say, hey, you need to install this to the disk. So that's right up here. So what we're going to do then is we're going to install it. So we're going to do we do need to do this as sudo, not just without. So do sudo sh, and it is a capital V. So Ventoy to disk, we have to give it some options. So we can either install it, we can force install it, or if you are updating your Ventoy installation, then you can do the -u. Let's go ahead and install it. What I did is I wiped this disk. I hope I wiped this disk. I can't remember if I wiped this disk, but I'm pretty sure I did, and I know I don't need anything on it. And then now we're just going to indicate the location, SDB, and we should be all set to go. It's going to give you two prompts that you will destroy all of the data on the disk. So it's going to go through here. It'll take you probably just about a minute or so, and it's going to go through writing data to the disk, creating your partitions. So it's going to actually create you a disk with two partitions on top of it. So the two partitions, one of those is just going to be your boot, and the other is going to be where you drop everything. So you can see here it says it has finished. Now let's go ahead and open up the disk utility and have a look at what it gave us. So inside of here we have our EFI partition, and then we just basically have a 31 gigabyte exFAT. And then on our 35 gigabyte exFAT here, if we boot up our drivers here, then this guy here can actually just be used as a standard USB as well. So you can drop any other files over here. It can basically be used as just a extendable drive guy over here. And then what you're going to do is just drop some ISO image over here. Now this is going to take a while, so I have another functioning one over here that already has some ISOs. Not only do you have to drop the files on there, and then you have to wait for them to write to the disk and save everything. And so what we are going to do now is I'm going to switch on over to a very, very horrible view that is going to be just a web camera looking at a laptop screen. Not optimal at all, but it's going to give us kind of the idea to what we're looking at. All right, so here, now, this guy here is running this is a Dell Inspiron where I have the option here to run the Legacy or the EFI. I have found on this case for the distros that are working on the system that it doesn't matter which one I pick. You can just go ahead and pick one, and it's going to give you a listing of all of the distros we have available. So here I put Linux Mint 19.3. I have Linux Mint Debian Edition 4, MX Linux, Peppermint, and Tails. Now, Tails, under Legacy, it's supposed to work, although that's Tails 4.5 is what he has on his directory listing. This is Tails 4.3. This does not seem to work. It doesn't work on EFI. It doesn't seem to work on Legacy on this. If I did have the latest Tails, it probably would. I didn't test Peppermint yet. MX Linux does not seem to work last time I tried it out. Linux Mint Debian Edition and Linux Mint did seem to work each time. So you can see here we are starting out Linux Mint, and this is the one drive we have here that is, it basically has all these different distros on it. I did want to test out Knoppix, which is supposed to work. What I think the best application for this guy is going to be is that we have a case where you can have a series of portable drives. If you have a series of portable drives, I was thinking like Tails, a Knoppix, maybe a Puppy, just things that are really supposed to be designed for portability. Having one drive with all of those on it would actually be a really neat application. So that's kind of what your application is. So there's our Linux Mint. We'll go ahead and boot her back up here, and we'll test out Peppermint this time. So boot it up. I gotta spam my F12 so I can get to my boot menu again. And then let's just go into EFI mode, and let's try our Peppermint. MX Linux did not seem to work for me. I'm not sure if it's going to work for other people as well. This guy, so far it's looking promising. So it looks as though it's probably is going to work. There is Peppermint. So we have Peppermint installed over here. So that seems to work pretty nicely as well. And so this guy could have a good application to have a variety of distros. Maybe if you're working in the tech industry and working in the tech industry that you might want to have a variety of distributions on. If you're going over and you're installing Linux distributions for people, that would be a good thing to use this for. You can have just one drive with a variety of different USBs on it, different distros on it rather, plug it into the individual computer and install whichever distro you would like to install for that individual client. So a lot of neat application in there. And I haven't tested out. I'm curious. A couple things I'm curious on is if I could take that partition, expand it out, maybe put an encrypted drive so I can have some encrypted files with me. And just curious things I'm really interested in looking into down the road. But for the most part, I think that it's actually a pretty neat application. And so I'll go ahead and put the link down here. You can go and give this a try for yourself. Let me know if you're able to get Tails to work anywhere. Maybe I'll try and download the 4.5, see if that works, and I'll take the time to drop a Knoppix on there. But overall, it's very fast to install. It seems to work pretty good. He does actually have a list. I think it's under tested ISOs. He has a whole list of distributions. So here he has various Windows 7, 8.1 servers, Windows PE, he has some Debians, so you can actually search for your favorite Linux distributions. So on this field, if you search for Knoppix, he does say that Knoppix 8.6 does work. That's the version I have. It would just take me about 10-15 minutes to put it on there prior to the video, so I didn't bother testing that. If we have a look at Tails, He did test Tails. You'll see that the first column, I think, is EFI. I think the second one is Legacy. ISO has some problems in EFI, UEFI. So, and again, note it that it is Tails 4.5. I was testing Tails 4.3. This does not work. Now, the other problem that I had is I was not able to get anything to boot off of the Mac. So if I take my guy out here, and drop it on the floor, okay, so my Mac does boot other Linux distributions just fine. I've booted Tails on it and a variety of other Linux distributions. This is, I think, a 2014 MacBook Air, I think is what we're looking at here. And so if I go ahead and boot this guy up, set this guy on top of here and move my cameras around for you guys, we can see here on the MacBook Air that it is an option. It goes into our bootloaders just fine. But anything I've attempted to load doesn't seem to work. So let's go ahead and do this. And then you'll see I have just a little character right up there on the screen. That's not a blob. This is, let's see, this guy's a blob, this guy's a blob, this guy's a blob. This guy's just a static cursor. It's just sitting there. And every distribution that I tried does this very same thing. Only thing I can do on this guy is just to force it off. So it does appear as though if you're trying to get a system running on a Mac, you're probably going to be out of luck, best I can tell. If somebody knows differently or has a Mac and wants to give it a try on a Mac, let me know in the comments down below if that happens to work. Like I said, I was able to get it to work on the Dell just fine, and I also tried the main PC we're recording on just fine. That seems to work. But with that, definitely neat application, something cool, a very good tool to have laying around, particularly if you have a lot of different applications for installing a variety or just testing a variety of different Linux distributions. This is a neat option. So kudos to the developers, pretty cool. And let me know what your thoughts about this in the comments down below.